Hello, and welcome to the 14th episode of Did You Know, in which I use the archives of the Northern Echo to tell of some curious and wondrous historical fascination. Now, did you know how the monks of Monkend met their end in an earthquake which shook all of Darlington and which may possibly have inspired one of Lewis Carroll's balmiest ideas based on our local mysterious landmark known as Hell's Kettle? Now, my title screen there shows a wonderful picture of some fabulous penny farthing cyclists outside the Croft Spa Hotel. And that's because next weekend, that is June the 10th and 11th, 2023, next weekend, 20 gardens in the village of Croft are going to be open to the public to raise money for the village church. Now, Croft is just a couple of miles south of Darlington down the A167, and although it looks like one village, it was once historically two separate communities. And that's why there are two grand halls within a stone's throw of one another in the village, and both of those grand halls are opening their gardens next weekend. Now, one of those halls is a Croft Hall, which has been the home of the Clervaux and Chater family for 600 years, as it is still to this day. And they owned and controlled much of the countryside around the village, as they still do to this day. Now, the second hall is Monkend Hall, which has an even older story attached to it, because just after William the Conqueror invaded England, he gave some of his captured land at Croft to one of his men, a chap called Innocent Moussard. And perhaps to salve his guilty conscience at the number of Englishmen he had killed in battle, Monsieur Moussard gave the land at Croft to St. Mary's Abbey at York, so the monks there would pray daily for his soul. Now, this land at Croft was a finger of land along the River Tees, and it included the church at Croft as well. And the monks probably sent a few of their number out to the village to live there and look after the people and to tend to the church that they had acquired. They may even possibly have had a monastery where Monkend Hall is today, because this was their most northern land in their diocese, whatever abbey has. They called this strip of land became known as Monkend because it was the end of the monks' territory. But in 1179, there was a terrible earthquake just to the south of Darlington, which shook the whole neighbourhood. In fact, the king, Henry II, was celebrating Christmas at Winchester when dread news arrived from Darlow that the ground, according to a chronicler, had risen up with such vehemence that it was equal to the highest tops of the mountains, and it towered above the lofty pinnacles of the churches. And at that height it remained from the 9th hour of the day until sunset. And at sunset it fell with so horrible a crash that it terrified all who saw that heap and heard the noise of its fall, whence many died from that fear, for the earth had swallowed it up and caused in the same place some very deep pits. Now, it is said that the earthquake threw up the hills on the Yorkshire bank of the River Tees that are to this day known as the Monkend Hills, and it is said that the earthquake destroyed the monastery that was on the grounds of Monkend Hall. So that is how the monks of Monkend came to meet their end. But I hear you cry, this story is not complete. That chronicler tells how the earthquake cause in the same place some very deep pits to be formed. And that is indeed true, because on the Durham side of the river, just next to the A167, which goes south from Darlington out of Bland's Corner, wiggles a bit past these pits here before reaching Herworth Place, going over the bridge at Croft and then down towards North Allerton. And these pits are beside the A167, where they are known as Hell's Kettles. There are two of them, and they are geologically unexplained. There used to be three of them, but in the 60s they straightened the road a bit and filled one of the kettles in. So only two remain. But these wondrous things have fascinated and intrigued botanists and geologists for centuries. They are said to be the only bodies of water in County Durham to be fed by springs. They have different pH levels. Each pit has a different pH level, so it has different flora and fauna growing around its margins. And you can see that how different the pits look, the composition of the water from this picture, I think. Not only that, no one has been able to satisfactorily work out how they came to be formed, these pits, and no one, absolutely no one, has ever discovered how deep they are. In fact, they are said to be bottomless. And indeed, the only known truth about Hell's Kettles is that they are somehow connected to the River Tees by a secret subterranean tunnel. Now, this is undoubtedly true, because when Cuthbert Tunstall was Bishop of Durham between 1522 and 1559, he determined to find how deep the bottomless pits of Hell's Kettles really were. So he procured a goose, upon which he put a secret mark, and then he had the goose rammed down Hell's Kettles. And it disappeared. The poor thing disappeared for 2 weeks, when the goose popped up about half a mile away next to the Croft Bridge in the middle of the River Tees. The bird was taken to the bishop, who saw his secret mark still upon it, and so he confirmed that this was the very same goose that had been rammed down Hell's Kettles. Now, because it was a goose, it was unable to tell the people where it had been for 2 weeks, but they knew that it proved that there was this strange subterranean world where this tunnel connects the bottomless pits to the River Tees. And then came confirmation of this confirmation in Lewis Carroll's day, we think. And he lived in the village from 1843 into the 1860s. And one day, a Indian diver, a man of colour, came passing through the Croft and Herworth areas looking for a circus to join. As he was a diver, the people grabbed hold of him and rammed the poor fellow down one of Hell's Kettles to see what happened to him. And he, like the goose, disappeared for 2 long weeks. And then he popped up about half a mile away in the middle of the river next to Croft-on-Tees Bridge. The villagers fished him out and tried to quiz him about where he had been for the last 2 weeks. But because he was a foreign sort of a fellow, he was unable to speak any English, and so he couldn't tell them where he had been. But they knew he had been living in some strange subterranean world beneath the A167, just south of Darlington. Now, as you know, Croft's most famous son is Lewis Carroll. He lived in the rectory, which you can just see kind of in the top right of the picture there, just opposite the church and also opposite the hotel. And he was clearly inspired by these strange stories of people and gooses living in subterranean worlds beneath the countryside of South Durham. And so when he came to write his fabulous children's book, Alice in Wonderland, all the action begins when Alice tumbles down a deep, deep bottomless pit and arrives in a strange subterranean world where strange things happen to her, just as it happened to the goose in the Bishop's Passage, and also to the mystical Indian diver when he was rammed down Hell's Kettles and took up residence in a strange subterranean world somewhere beneath the A167 in the south of Durham. And so, there you have it. Thank you very much for your precious time. If you subscribe to Did You Know, you'll never miss an episode. And if you dash over to the Northern Echo's website, you'll see that I add an article in a similar vein there every day at 9:30 a.m. You can sign up to receive those. You can sign up to my newsletter as well. And I'm sure you can sign up for all other sorts of technical wonderment and fascinations. But most importantly of all, you now know that having watched this episode of Did You Know, when you come to visit the gardens of Croft, you'll be able to say, yes, I do know how the monks of Monkend met their end, and how Hell's Kettles, the bottomless pits of the A167, inspired the central concept of the world's most famous childhood book. Thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.